Hey, what's up? It's GC Kinsey, here to give y'all an update on the physical changes I've had during my 3rd year on testosterone. I started T on June 24th, 2022, which means I recently had my 3rd tranniversary. And each year that I've been on T, I've done a recap of the physical changes I've had, so I'm doing that again now for year 3. If you haven't seen those other recaps and you want all the details, then go check them out. They're linked in the description. But for now, here's the Cliff Notes version. Here's the list of the expected physical changes from the informed consent paperwork I signed when I first started T. Here it is marked up with the changes I actually had during year 1, and here it is marked up further with all the changes I had during year 2. This markup includes the time frames for when each change first kicked in, and that sets the scene for year 3. There are 2 of these changes that I never talk about because it's too personal. That's libido changes and genital changes. There's also a change that's never been relevant, which is cessation of menstrual periods. Those were already gone long before I started T because I was on a different medication to get rid of them, and then once I had my hysterectomy, they were gone. I didn't have any new changes that started during year 3, just more progress on some of the existing ones. 2 of them stayed the same this year, which were sweating and body odor and faster nail growth. I still have to wash my pits and put on deodorant once a day, and I still have to trim my nails once a week, just like I did during year 2. All these other changes did progress further during year 3, so now I want to share all the details about them, going in order of when each change first appeared. Number 1. Skin oiliness and acne. Year 3 was the year of the bacne, which actually started about halfway through year 2 after I had a small dose increase on T, but it didn't go anywhere during year 3 even though my dose stayed the same. I'd hoped it would go away after I had top surgery and could stop binding, but no. So I'm guessing it'll be here throughout the rest of puberty 2.0 unless my dermatologist can prescribe something that gets rid of it. I had some chest acne that did clear up a lot after top surgery and it's almost gone now, but it was never as bad as the bacne to begin with. Aside from that, I've just had the odd breakout here and there on my neck and chin and jaw area as I've grown more facial hair. 9 times out of 10, if I get a pimple on the lower half of my face, then a new beard hair is going to pop out of it. Those haven't been too disruptive or anything. I just put concealer on them if I've got one and I have to be on camera that day. The other skin oiliness thing that's changed quite a bit this year is actually my scalp. I had such greasy hair during my 2nd year on T. I had no choice but to shampoo my scalp at least twice a week as opposed to once every 2 weeks that I did pre-T. But that settled out some during the last year and I can now go 5 to 7 days between shampoos. I don't know if that also explains why my hair was less curly during year 2 and now it's starting to get its old curl wave pattern back, but either way, I'm just glad I don't have to spend as much money on shampoo. Number 2. Mental and emotional changes. This is something that steadily improved the whole time I've been on T, having more stable moods, being a lot less affected by stress or other negative emotions, and just generally feeling more calm and chill. But I've also had 2 other things contribute to the improvement of my mental state, and that's my gender-affirming surgeries. I had a hysterectomy halfway through year 2 and top surgery halfway through year 3. I didn't mention my hysterectomy in these updates last year because I wasn't ready to talk about surgery on the channel yet, but what I did mention was how much more positive and gender euphoric my mental state got that year. And now I can finally say, full disclosure, both of those surgeries really enhanced the mental and emotional changes I was already getting from T by flooding me with way more gender euphoria than I ever could have expected. I thought my surgeries would mostly just alleviate dysphoria, not give me all this euphoria too. The way these surgeries and long-term hormone use have helped my dysphoria is by changing the way it affects me. I talked in one of my other videos about how I used to experience dysphoria as pain. Getting misgendered would really hurt and would leave me crying in my car in parking lots or sometimes even refusing to go out in public for days at a time, more often than I'd care to admit. Once I got on T, misgendering still hurt, but not as bad and for not as long. By the time I'd had 2 surgeries and been on T for 2.5 years, getting misgendered pretty much stopped hurting. Instead, it just made me go, huh? Like, who are they talking about? Couldn't be me. So the nature of my dysphoria changed from pain to more like confusion or cognitive dissonance. And considering how debilitating the pain used to be, that change is huge, y'all. Number 3. Deeper voice. A deeper voice was both the number one thing I wanted from T and the most intimidating part about starting T as a singer. That's why I've been on a lower than average dose this whole time. I was hoping for a slower than average voice change that I could still sing through. I've been very happy with that decision every year, but I'd have to say year 3 was my favorite for singing because that's when I could really feel the voice changes the most. Over the last year, not only did I have significant changes in where the break point sits between my chest and head registers, I also had to change the entire way that I used my chest range, because when I tried to sing in chest voice the way I always had before, I started getting some interesting results. Either my voice would crack or it would come out really distorted, and not in that cool, gritty rock and roll sort of way that I like to do on purpose sometimes, more like in a gravelly and strained way. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with vocal distortion. Some of my favorite singers of all time have very gritty or raspy voices. But as someone who likes to sing across a variety of different styles of music, where sometimes it's better to have a distorted voice and other times it's better to have a smooth, clear voice, I wanted the ability to turn it on and off. And what was happening with this distortion coming out of my chest voice was that I suddenly couldn't turn it off. It didn't hurt or anything, I just couldn't control it. It would happen whether I was going for that kind of sound or not. So, what do you do as a singer when something like that happens? Well, number one, don't panic. Even if your first instinct is to go, oh my god, my voice is wrecked, you've got to remind yourself that you're going through puberty right now and it's supposed to be changing. Number two, get experimental. If you go to sing something and it doesn't come out the way you expected, try singing it again in different ways until you find the sound that you want. And number three, be patient, because that experimentation can take a lot of time. You might not figure out exactly what the problem is right away. And once you do, you might have to practice for days or weeks or even months before you can reliably sing in a way that addresses that problem. You might not have a linear progression. Maybe your voice goes back and forth between sounding better some days and worse other days before it eventually sounds better overall. But the more you get a feel for how to achieve the sound you want, the more you build up that muscle memory and the easier it becomes over time. So that's what I did throughout most of this past year. I could feel my vocal cords getting thicker and hear my voice getting heavier all throughout the year, but I had most of my vocal weight gains between months 6 and 9. So that's when I had the least predictable vocal ability, and when I spent the most time relearning how to sing and reinforcing that with training. The number one difference I found in how I had to approach singing was to sing lighter, meaning with less air pressure forced through my vocal cords. The reason I'd always sung with so much air pressure in the past was unconsciously because of dysphoria. I had this innate need to make my voice sound heavier than it actually was. But the heavier my voice got on T, the more I had to lighten up and not force so much air pressure through, because when I did, that's what was causing those cracks or that strained gravelly kind of sound. Once I started letting the air flow through my vocal cords instead of pushing it through, that's when smooth, clear notes started coming out again. I'm still in the early-ish stages of this new approach, and now that I've fixed it for basic singing with my chest voice, I'm having to retrain on other things, like using intentional chest voice distortion, or blending my chest and head registers together to sing in a mixed voice. The muscle memory for singing lighter isn't fully locked in yet, so sometimes I do still occasionally catch myself trying to sing the old way. But it's already much better now than it was, say, 6 or even 3 months ago. And the most important thing I want to point out is that if you listen to my post-T voice recordings, or my voice change tracking playlist for year 3, you'll notice that all this vocal instability never once stopped me from singing. I was still able to record a lot of music that I am very happy with. Could I have done a live show during that time? Probably not, but I was still plenty productive in the studio. And I could absolutely do a live show now as long as I choose songs that I've practiced and locked in that muscle memory for singing lighter. That lighter approach actually would make it so much easier to do a live show because it gives me so much more vocal stamina. I can sing for longer periods of time without my voice getting worn out. Who would have guessed? Something I did to supplement my change in vocal technique was look into resources for opera singers. If my goal was to get rid of unwanted distortion, then I knew opera tutorials would help me the most because opera singers are classically trained to sound perfectly clear and smooth. So even though I don't sing opera myself, I've been applying what I learned from opera singers to other styles I do sing, like musical theater or pop, and most recently also getting into jazz. On top of all the vocal weight gains I had this year, I also had something else really exciting happen. I gained a tiny bit of new low range. The lowest note I can sing has moved from G2 to F sharp 2. And the reason I'm so stoked about this is because I gained the G2 all the way back toward the end of my first year on T, and then I didn't gain any new low notes until I was almost at the end of year 3. So during all that time in between, I had grudgingly accepted that G2 might be the lowest I could ever go. But now that the F sharp 2 has appeared, I have hope again that I might get down to F2 or E2 or maybe even lower someday. So that covers voice changes from a singing perspective. In terms of my speaking voice, it's been less obvious. I can feel the vocal weight gains, and I could hear the difference they made in the poetry I recorded for this year of my voice change tracking project, but I don't hear them so much in conversation or when I compare other kinds of recordings of me speaking, such as videos like this one. I can proudly say that all throughout year 3 on T, I did pretty reliably get called sir over the phone, which almost feels too good to be true because that's definitely still not the case in person. In person, it's more of a crapshoot. I've had several people tell me, well, if you talk, then surely that gets you gendered correctly in person, right? But it's not as reliable as you might think. Especially at times when I'm around a bunch of other dudes who are presumably cis. When I hear their voices in direct comparison to mine, it feels like something about mine just doesn't quite hold up, but I can't pinpoint exactly what. And it isn't just that I try to talk gay, because I get that same feeling around other gay dudes. My current theory is that maybe it's about vocal maturity. Someone whose voice dropped years ago is going to have a more settled and more practiced sound than I can right now, but I have no way to prove whether that's what it is. I also get very mixed feedback on my speaking voice here on YouTube, which is interesting and pretty hilarious. Y'all would be amazed at how many times I'll get one comment that says, "You still sound like a woman," and another one that says, "Your voice made me think you were a cis man," on the same video. So at this point, I genuinely couldn't tell you how my speaking voice comes across to other people. I'm also just not really sure if I care. All my friends love my speaking voice, and I don't think it sounds like nails on a chalkboard anymore, so that's a pretty big win in my book. Plus, I will always care more about singing than speaking anyway, and I love my singing voice. Also, my voice is still actively changing, and as long as that's the case, then that means how it sounds right now is temporary. I don't know when it's going to be done or what it's going to sound like a few years from now, but that's why I'm tracking my voice changes in the meantime. Number 4, increased muscle mass and strength. There's still not a lot to report on this one because it's still hard to measure muscle gains in any sort of concrete way, but I can say that I made a fascinating discovery at 2.5 years on T right after top surgery, which is that I actually had some baby pecs under my tits. I was pretty large in the chest department before, so I didn't know if any muscle was hiding under there. But after surgery, I was pleasantly surprised to find that I had just barely enough pecs to flex. I was fully expecting my chest to be concave, but apparently swimming and focusing on upper body drills in the pool paid off. So now that I know I'm not starting from zero, my next goal is to bulk up my pecs and my arms and back and shoulders as much as possible. Number 5. Hair changes. Aside from voice changes, I would say that hair changes were the biggest ones I had during year 3. I'm going to break this down into 3 areas: body hair, head hair, and facial hair. Body hair has become such a source of gender euphoria during year 3. My stomach hair got thicker, my leg hair got thicker, my thigh hair got a lot thicker, and started growing up the butt cheeks, so now I can relate to all those memes about ass hair on T. I still don't have any back or shoulder hair, which is fine because that would just get shaved, and the tiny handful of like a dozen chest hairs I had last year all got removed during top surgery, which is also fine because now I don't have to shave those anymore. I also started growing some new body hair this year. My arm hair extends further down onto my wrist now, and my leg hair grows all the way onto the tops of my feet. I can even grow terminal hairs on my toes now. Moving on to head hair next. The shape of my hairline has just kept getting more and more masculine, which I absolutely love. I've had a tiny bit of thinning in this top middle section here. I'm not really sure if it even shows up on camera. I mostly only notice it when it's wet after a shower. And it's nowhere near enough for me to be concerned about hair loss. I still have a nice thick head of hair. And I feel like my hairline shape and hair thickness are right in that sweet spot of this is how it should look to get read as masculine. But this is another one of those reasons why I'm glad I'm on a lower dose of tea and the changes are happening more gradually. That lets me keep a close eye on it so I can intervene if my hair does start to get thinner than I want. Because eventually the plan is to grow it back out to at least chin if not shoulder length, and I'd like to have enough hair to do that. And I'd rather not rely on a DHT blocker like finasteride for that because that can also inhibit facial hair growth, which no. It also goes without saying that stopping tea just for something like male pattern baldness is not an option. If I do end up losing all my hair, then I'll just be like, oh well, bald is beautiful. But I'm hoping I'll get lucky enough with genetics plus good hair care plus maybe minoxidil down the road that I can have the long flowing locks or the man bun of my dreams, once I can grow enough facial hair to go with it. So that brings me to my third and final hair change. I started my third year on tea with this on my face and ended it with this, which makes me so happy I don't even have the words. My dirt stash has been around since year 1, but it actually got eclipsed by my other facial hair growth during year 3, especially on my chin, which is wild because I couldn't even grow peach fuzz on my chin pre-tea. And if it continues at this pace, I could have a fully connected goatee within the next year and a half to 2 years, which is so exciting. I've also had other random patches of hair spring up on the sides of my face. And there's not really any rhyme or reason to them. Like, I'm growing a left sideburn but not a right one. I don't know what's up with that. But the result as of now is that I've achieved a scraggly middle school boy beard, which means I do keep it trimmed because when it's grown out it looks kind of ridiculous on a 37-year-old. Over the course of this past year, I've found I have to trim it more and more often. At first, it was every 6 weeks. Now it's about every 3 weeks for the dirt stash and 1 to 2 weeks for all the rest. That's about how long it takes for all the hair to get to half a centimeter long, which is when it has to go. And I find it so funny that everything else grows faster than the dirt stash now, even though it's been around less than half as long. I know my facial hair is going to be a work in progress for a good long while, but even in its current state, it still brings me so much gender euphoria. I love how it feels to have stubble on my face every time I trim. And I love sitting around playing with my chin hairs whenever they get long enough. It brings me joy. Number 6. Facial masculinization. This one is another short update. I'm just gonna let these photos speak for themselves. They're from the videos I filmed on the day I started tea and then on my first, second, and third tranniversaries. So each of these were taken exactly 1 year apart. Clearly most of the facial masculinization has happened in the chin and jaw area, but I also want to point out the neck to jaw ratio and how much of a difference a thicker neck makes. And my hair changes make my face look more masculine too. Number 7. Fat redistribution. This is the last update, and it's also a short one, but basically, just like during year 2 when I had some unintended weight fluctuations around my hysterectomy, I had a similar thing happen during year 3 around top surgery, just to a lesser degree. And like before, any fat I gained went higher up on my abdomen, kind of filling in that dip in the waist instead of going to my lower belly and hip area, which is great. Something that's made fat redistribution harder to track since top surgery, which I had halfway during year 3, is that I'm now actively trying to bulk up my upper body. So numbers on the scale aren't that helpful because they're weighing fat and muscle together. So I don't really have any reliable way to track fat redistribution other than just looking in the mirror. Same issue I have with trying to track muscle gains. But as long as I'm happy with what I see in the mirror, then that's what's most important to me, and I'm happier with my reflection than I have ever been. Okay, that is all my physical changes from this year, and here's that chart again from the beginning, updated with my changes from year 3 while I share some final thoughts. First, I can't believe how testosterone has made me so much more comfortable with myself and so much more confident around others. And that's only gotten better the longer I've been on it. It really drives home how important it is to have the correct hormones and the correct levels that your body needs. Second is that even though my third year on T had some of the more difficult changes like the back knee and the unpredictability when singing, I regret absolutely nothing, and I wouldn't change a thing about this journey. I've really had to learn to trust the process on T, but it has never steered me wrong. And third is just how fortunate I am to be on T in the first place. In a society that's grown increasingly transphobic in recent years, gender-affirming care can be difficult to access, and it's only getting more difficult now for those of us in the US. So I just want to say how much I appreciate all the supportive people out there, both in the trans and non-binary community and in healthcare, who've made it possible for me to get and keep my access to T. And with that, now is where I'm going to wrap things up and turn the conversation over to you. If you've been following my progression on T, do you have any questions about anything? If you're on a hormone journey of your own, do you have any thoughts or advice to share? If you're thinking about starting hormones, what are some of the considerations going through your mind? I would love to hear from all of you, so drop a comment below and let's get a discussion going. You can also reach out to me on other social media. I'm GC Kinsey across all platforms. And while you're here, feel free to check out some of my other videos. I've got more vlogs like this one about my experiences as a queer person, including the past 2 years of updates on my physical changes on T. I've got cosplay music videos, cosplay tutorials, a whole bunch of cool resources for singers about voice changes on T, and more right here on this channel. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything new. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all of your support. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you on the next one.